What would happen if an asteroid traveling at 20 kilometers per second struck the Earth? This isn't a science fiction movie, but a real event that occurred 66 million years ago. An asteroid fragment 10 kilometers in diameter crashed into the Earth. The impact site is now the Yucatan Peninsula in the Gulf of Mexico, and it triggered the last mass extinction event known to us. The dinosaur dynasty, which had ruled the Earth for 160 million years, was completely wiped out. This raises the question, a 10-kilometer diameter sounds huge, but compared to the entire Earth, it's not that significant. How did it manage to kill all the dinosaurs? And how did our mammalian ancestors survive this catastrophe? Let's take a look together. I will divide this devastating disaster into 3 stages. First stage, let's move to the first stage. Upon entering Earth's atmosphere, this 10-kilometer wide asteroid was accelerated to a speed of nearly 100,000 km/h. Therefore, the energy released at the moment of impact was equivalent to the explosion of 1 billion atomic bombs. The crater formed by the impact is still clearly visible today, the Chicxulub crater. This enormous crater has a diameter of 150 kilometers and a depth of 20 kilometers, and its formation has been dated to 66 million years ago. In the instant of the impact, all living things within a 1,000-kilometer radius were vaporized. The surrounding Earth's crust was deformed by the collision, and then the seismic shockwaves began to spread across the globe. An apocalypse was about to begin. A few minutes after the impact, massive earthquakes began to erupt successively all over the world. Volcanic activity was already quite frequent during this period, so it was as if Pandora's box had been opened. For the enormous dinosaurs, all of this was undoubtedly hopeless. Due to their cumbersome size, they could only struggle helplessly. The impact and earthquakes also triggered a series of tsunamis. Towering waves would sweep across the oceans and inland lakes in the following hours. A great flood swept through the North American region, submerging a vast number of creatures. The rapidly rising floodwaters became an unstoppable natural disaster. In such an extreme situation, an Alamosaurus, over 30 meters long, was as fragile as a roadside tree. Less than an hour after the impact, the molten rock fragments that had been ejected into space were pulled back to Earth by gravity. As these materials re-entered the atmosphere, they became incandescent and red-hot. Simply put, it began to rain fire. The scorching atmosphere, like a burning purgatory, began to relentlessly reap lives. The creatures still on the surface felt as if they were on a grill heated to hundreds of degrees. Dinosaurs like the Edmontosaurus would have been cooked alive, and all of this was just the beginning. Rock fragments fell like raindrops, continuously pelting the dinosaurs. Some Edmontosaurus showed great family concern, but unfortunately, all their actions were futile. The rain of fire grew more and more intense. The dinosaurs, which had once dominated the land with their imposing bodies, now became living targets. 2 hours after the impact, suffocating dust and firestorms began to envelop the Earth, affecting nearly half the planet. Large swaths of forest began to burn, and the substances produced by the combustion accelerated the disaster's progress. This spreading inferno made it impossible for animals to escape, including the Triceratops hiding in the valleys. Their size doomed them to be caught. The pterosaurs flying in the sky were not spared either. The fire would pierce their wing membranes, and a large number of them died in agony. However, the animals that were usually trodden underfoot by the dinosaurs were, at this moment, able to hide underground and in caves. The disaster continued until the entire planet was covered in dust. The great dinosaur empire, from this moment on, officially entered the countdown to its extinction. Second stage. After the initial disasters caused by the impact, there was no respite for life. the Earth faced a second wave of chain reactions. A large number of volcanoes began to unleash their energy, and countless volcanic particles, upon entering the atmosphere, joined the previous dust to block out the sunlight. The Earth plunged into a temporary period of darkness. The oceans were no better off than the continents. Sulfur-rich dust rained down, eventually forming acid rain. Countless ancient coral reefs were completely destroyed. These homes where life had thrived became graveyards for marine life. Large marine reptiles, including mosasaurs, were all wiped out. Fortunately, the deep sea regions offered a lifeline for scavengers, such as arthropods and ancient fish, which survived this terrible catastrophe thanks to the stability of the deep ocean. They even lived more comfortably than before. After all, during this time, there was an endless supply of food. While these animals enjoyed their doomsday feast, the chain reaction from the asteroid impact continued. Countless forests were destroyed, and the sky was obscured by dust, blocking most of the sunlight. Consequently, temperatures began to drop steadily. The surviving animals started to face a global long-term period of cold. This phenomenon is called an impact winter, which caused Earth's temperature to plummet. Plants could not perform photosynthesis, and the entire food chain suffered a massive blow. The Earth entered a long, cooling period of extreme cold and darkness. For creatures that depended on sunlight and warm environments, especially the dinosaurs, this drastic change was almost fatal. Millions of species were completely eliminated within days to weeks. In contrast, mammals were relatively small. They did not require as much food as the dinosaurs. More importantly, the metabolism of mammals helped them adapt to cold environments. Many mammals regulated their body temperature to cope with the cold, and some had the ability to hibernate, which allowed them to survive in times of food scarcity. Furthermore, mammals had relatively larger brains and flexible response capabilities. They were able to find shelter after the disaster, reducing their contact with the outside world and avoiding further danger. Having been long suppressed by the dinosaurs, they usually had to forage at night, so the mammals of that time were also better adapted to dark environments. The dinosaurs, due to their large size and slower reactions, could not adapt to the sudden environmental changes as flexibly as mammals. Finally, under a series of chain reactions and the collapse of the food chain, the dinosaur family was wiped out. This is the last known mass extinction event, which caused the complete extinction of approximately 75% to 80% of all species. The land dinosaurs, marine reptiles like plesiosaurs and mosasaurs, and the pterosaurs in the sky all went extinct. This is known as the Cretaceous-Paleogene extinction event. The asteroid impact was not just a momentary disaster, it brought millions of years of chain reactions. Third stage. After the countless natural disasters had passed, we enter the third stage. In the many years following the impact, the Earth remained a silent, dead place. The thriving life that was once seen everywhere seemed to have returned to chaos. But the sunlight finally returned, and life was not completely extinguished. The adaptability of insects is extremely strong. When there were still few animals on land, the ancestors of insects were already reigning supreme. Thus, they became the first group of creatures to re-emerge. Besides these insects, a portion of reptiles also survived. The survivors generally had one thing in common: they were relatively small and highly adaptable. This, of course, included our mammalian ancestors. They successfully inherited an Earth without dinosaurs. Looking at the long river of history, mammals did not appear much later than dinosaurs, but they were constantly suppressed by them at the bottom of the food chain. It can be said that if the dinosaurs had not gone extinct, mammals would never have had the chance to rise. So did all the dinosaurs really go extinct? Actually, no. One of their unique bloodlines managed to survive and, to this day, continues to rule the vast skies. Yes, that is the birds. The bird dynasty also evolved from certain types of dinosaurs, so the blood of dinosaurs flows in their veins. However, the age of dinosaurs is now completely over, because next, the empire of mammals is about to rise.